Hello, beloved one. Wonderful to be with you today. Now, I want to talk about a subject today that is often in everyone's reality, day-to-day reality. And that is how to deal with other people's judgment of you. So, all of you know that judgment is a part of life. It's not a part of life that you would celebrate or think that in very positive terms. Oftentimes you feel a judgment can be very negative. Judges in your court system around the world pass down judgments. And that is done, when it is done well, it is done through the process of looking at evidence. It is looking at the laws of the land. It is a careful consideration of what's happening, what did happen, what the laws are. All these things come into consideration. But the kind of judgment that I'm talking about today is the judgment that happens in the moment. This is the kind of judgment that happens in response or as a reaction to someone's behavior, their opinion, their actions, their thoughts. And it's one thing when you are judging others, even if it's just in your own mind. But it's something else when you feel that you are being judged, or when you are overtly, obviously being judged. And even if, and here's where it gets sort of interesting in how you receive that energy. It's obvious when the judgment is negative towards you. The feelings that are evoked inside of you, but sometimes it's not so obvious when the judgment is also a positive one, right? There's a difference when someone is paying you a compliment or saying something kind and loving to you, and when they make a positive judgment. You are a smart person. There's no real compliment, it's a judgment. And what goes along with that judgment is an expectation of future behavior. The same is true with a negative judgment, right? You are this or you are that. So because you are this or that, it puts you in this category, in this box. And no one likes to be stuffed into a box. It's confining. It generates this worry inside that you won't live up to the expectation if it's a positive judgment. You are smart. Well, what happens if you don't make such a smart choice, or what might be perceived as not such a smart choice or a smart decision in your life? Then you run the risk of losing that positive judgment. And when it's a negative judgment, it also evokes that feeling of, oh, I have to change that, or I'll show you how bad I can be. There's this need then to react back, to push back. Judgment tends to create, or it seeds the ground for reaction. A judgment confines the person or group of individuals that are being judged. And that confinement does not sit well for anyone. Again, whether the judgment appears to be positive or negative, ultimately it can have a very undermining effect on the individual or the group's ability to grow, to explore, to entertain the possibility of doing things differently or behaving differently, right? And if enough people make the judgment, then the individual themselves or the group begins to believe the judgment, right? And when you believe the judgment, you have confined yourself to a very small box. You have limited your own self, right? If your religion believes, or the judgment has been, both internally and externally, that you are the chosen ones, well, that is a box that can become very confining, because in order to be the chosen one, you have to act a certain way, you have to present yourself a certain way, you have to think a certain way, regardless of what's happening inside of you. There are expectations in place with every judgment. And whether you feel you want to rebel against those expectations, thereby actually shoring up the expectation, or if you feel you have to toe that line, you have to live up to that expectation, thereby shoring up that expectation. The best way to deal with, to work with, to move through the judgment of others is just a few very simple steps. They may not be easy, but they are simple. The first is to stop the judgment right while it's happening. To, particularly if this is a judgment or a person who tends to judge you often. And you can tell the difference between a judgment and a compliment. You can tell the difference between a judgment and someone who is sharing their own feelings in regards to your behavior. Now, this takes practice, and the chances of you stumbling about a bit or making some mistakes in how you relate to others is that's part of life. That's okay. Don't worry too much about that. You can always make amends. You can always repair any kind of damage done by your mistake. But you want to learn the difference between judgment and someone who is sharing about your behavior. Lower your defenses enough to make that discernment. Is this person judging me, or do I need to take responsibility for my behavior, my words, my thoughts, my deeds? What's really happening here? And even when someone's making a positive judgment, you can stop. Once you feel the energy of judgment, once you get to know the energy of judgment, not from the mind, but from here or from your gut, what's your gut telling you? Then you politely stop the person speaking. Excuse me, please. Your judgment, even though it sounds very positive, does not help me. I'm a multifaceted being. I am not just smart. I am so much more than that. Or I'm not just this or that. I'm not just an addict or someone who struggles with money. I am so much more than that. I am not just a Christian or a Muslim. I am so much more than that. So you stop. You stop the person politely. And you make a request. If there is a negative judgment coming your way, ask them to please talk about how they feel rather than what their opinion about you. Right? To say, I am willing to hear your feelings about my behavior, about my actions, about my opinion. But what is not all right is for you to judge me for who I am, for the choices that I have made, that I'm making now, that I will make in the future. But I'm always willing to hear your feelings, how they make you feel, what you're feeling right now in relation to what I've said or done. Open up the possibility of dialogue, a conversation. But a judgment is not a conversation. It's a statement that is supposed to stand. And you can say no to that. No. And when you have time to yourself, that's the first thing. The second thing is when you have time to yourself, check in how you feel. Was there any truth? Can you get something? Not looking for truth, not so you can change to please them. But sometimes truth comes in a not so great package, but it's still truth. And you feel if there's anything in it, anything in that judgment that could help you grow as a person, maybe just the act of saying no, thank you, please stop, would help you to grow enormously. And when you felt it out, then the last thing to see if there's anything in that for you, anything that makes sense, or there's truth there, or that you can grow from. And once you've looked at that, when it's all done, let it go. Remind yourself that you are so much more than that one thing, that you choose not to live in a box, that you live in a structure that you've created for yourself that is filled with light and air, room to breathe, room to discover, room to transform, room to change your mind, room to go back to that same person and say, you know, it felt like a judgment when you said it, and I stand by that, but I can see your point. Or there was some truth to that, and I had to take a good hard look at it, right? You can be all that. You can be all that. You let it go. Don't hang on to those judgments. You get what you need out of it, out of the experience, and you let it go. Do not allow other people to define you, to tell you what box you are supposed to live in. Create the structure that holds your life together from the inside. Inspiration and help and learning from the outside, but you create the structure that supports your life from the inside. Don't let others create that structure for you by the judgments, the opinions, and the labels they try to push onto you. Whether it's a family member, your parents, your spouse, your community, your religion, your culture, your place of higher learning, your spiritual teacher. You decide the structure from within. But remember those 3 parts and practice them as best you can. You can even ask someone for the first one. Is that a judgment? It feels like a judgment to me, but I want to check with you to ask, what are you really saying to me? I'm not sure I understand the nuances of what's happening here, right? You can ask. You can ask, you can inquire, you can say stop, no thank you. Feel it out for yourself and then let it go. You are love, you are light, you are extraordinary. I know it, and I'm here to support you until you know it. Namaste. Hi, it's Danielle, creator and founder of Beloved Publications, your home of Mother Mary's teachings as they're channeled through me. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment. I would love to hear from you. If you're interested in more of Mother's teachings, please visit our website, www.belovedpublications.com. And there you'll find lots of great ways of connecting with Mother. And if you want to join our community, you get an awesome free mini course on preparing for and connecting with your spirit guides. You will love it. So I hope to see you there soon. Thanks so much.